I should be dead or I should be in prison. And that's, I mean, you know, if life were fair, I would be dead or I would be in prison. While I was in the throes of my heroin addiction, one overdose, I woke up in the hospital, and it was like I just woke up after a couple hours, but it was 9 days later. I was in a coma. And the strange thing about this is that before I came out of the coma, and I tell people this, but there was a little tiny red dot, and I was dreaming of a little tiny red dot, and it was really dark red. And it started to get larger, and when it got larger, the red turned into a little lighter orange, and it got larger, and it turned into pink, and then it started to look like muscle tissue under a microscope. You could see the threads and everything in the muscle tissue. And then the circle got very large, and then it was like, like a flash of light, and I'd come up out of it, and they told me that I'd been down for 9 days. That was something that stuck in my memory. That was pretty wild. That's the mission, baby. Treat me like a tramp, like your tramp. I don't even think one bit of my childhood was ever normal. Two parents that were alcoholic, drug addict artists from New York that loved me more than anything. I mean, they gave me anything I wanted. They spoiled me shitless. And I mean, it was crazy. It was wild, but to me, it was my family and it was home. I got a bass when I was 13 years old. I played with a guy who was close to a singer, the singer Pentagram. His name was Bobby Liebling. About 2 months after that, Bobby asked me if I wanted to join Pentagram. Next thing you know, it was opening up for Judas Priest, and it was crazy. I mean, it was so surreal. I was like, I had to go to high school the next day. These guys needed a singer in a band called Obsessed, and they wanted somebody. They said they wanted a mixture of Iggy Pop, Jim Morrison, and Ozzy Osbourne. And I came as close as I could to that. I had this just idea of having a straightforward rock and roll band, and we didn't want to come across too seriously. And we started playing, and we started getting popular, and we played little clubs and started packing them in, and being a regular at these little clubs. And then we went on, played lots of gigs throughout DC, and it went through several different versions because people would bail out because I was becoming very hard to deal with, not on stage or anything, but it was just my personal life. I was pretty much wrapped into my own thing, and I'd show up, and I would always show up to shows. I couldn't tell you what kind of condition I might show up in, and I would show up to rehearsals most of the time. I opened up for the Ramones several times. Opened up for Ron Wood, and Bo Diddley, and Iggy Pop. CBS Records were serious about maybe signing us, and we were in New York. We had just done a showcase at the Cat Club up there with a band called the Dan Reed Network, and at the time I was completely hooked on dope. And I was sick, and I couldn't find anything. And I totally unraveled and fell apart. And I was so sick when I walked into the offices of CBS Records, they just looked at our managers and said, get him some help and come back and see us. Well, let's just put it this way. At the end of my shtick, I was like hanging out with amputees. I was pretty much hanging out in the graveyard because I was hanging out with people with missing limbs and oil dens. And like, I mean, I went into the deep parts. I became friends with people that were living in abandoned houses in southeast part of our city. And with no electricity and no water, sitting in there doing a thing, getting high. It got to a point where I just didn't want to wake up. I ended up very empty. It got to the end where family was dead and gone. The place I grew up in had been sold. I was in an apartment that my uncle was paying rent for as a promise to my mother when she died, just to watch out for her boy. And I was in this apartment, and there was no dirty, bloody laundry all over the apartment, no food, blood stains on the ceiling and the walls. And I was 112 pounds, and I was completely sick. I needed a shot of dope so bad, but I didn't want a shot of it. I just did. It was the last thing I wanted, but I needed it. I went into the bathroom. The bathroom I went many times before and looked in the mirror and told myself yeah, you're looking all right, man. You've lost some weight, looks kind of cool. I looked in the bathroom mirror, and at that time, I was looking back at this complete skeleton, greasy, yellow-toned skeleton of a person. I sunk it in, and it finally occurred to me that all my great ideas, all my talent, all the things I did fucking completely put me in a fucked up place. Some people will call that humility, to finally admit the truth that I've made a fucking mess out of my life. Some people would call it God's grace. And I guess in the real world, we would call it a moment of clarity.
It's in New York, the cop in the dope, way up in Washington High.
Over 15 years have gone by without me playing with the factory, and situations and opportunities came before me in the last few years to where I could just start this all back up. It doesn't happen that often. Playing music again is an incredible sensation. I've always loved it. It got me high, it gave me a thrill even back when I was doing it a long time ago. It's just that the feeling I get from it now, and I don't really am not trying so hard to be myself or be something that I think I am. I'm just being myself and actually enjoying the hell out of it. Last 6 years of my life, there's been a total transformation. I was able to experience sitting there hopeless at one point, thinking there was nothing left to live for, to actually come to a point and say there's always more to live for. Stuff keeps coming my way. I'm married, I have a wonderful wife, I travel, it's the coolest thing is that the quality of people in my life now. I mean, I've already lost out on a lot, but I've also gained a lot. So, but knowing is all the difference.
Come on, guys, show